I wanted to tell you about a little story, and maybe two of them. And one would be the trip to Canada with my mother and my two sisters. And we went with our mother. And she swore that she was Irish, 100%. And that she made fun of my father being Scottish all the time. And so when we were in Canada, we went to the archives and we found out that she was not just Irish. She was really Scotch, because the first parliament that was in England, one of the great uncles or something was in the first set of parliament, and he was a junior, McClellan Jr. So, excuse me, Cathy was on my mother's side. Cathy. So when I looked in the archives, I found out that they made an error in the archives, because if there's a junior, what must there be?
Senior.
Absolutely. So I kept looking and digging and scratching all over the place to find out that the senior was Cathy, and he came from Scotland. So therefore, and my mother used to tease and razz my dad, because he always would give me wonderful things, and a left-handed, scissors, because I'm left-handed, and everything was, for Cathy, the Irish, and and all that, and Scottish and all that. And my mother was real proud being Irish. So we found out that she's Irish and she's English, but she was majorly Scottish. So that was the first part.
So she knew that.
So she knew that.
Found out
She found that out.
She was
and
alive.
we had a wonderful trip there, and we just had a wonderful time to see what my mother had accomplished all of her life, and how everybody loved her, and they called her Tom because she was quite a tomboy. And so, to not labor on any more about that, but it was a wonderful experience for me. I'd never been to Canada before, and I didn't get to see where she lived and everything, and she used to be able to go for boating and everything, and she could roller skate, and she could ice skate, and she could sing, and she could play the organ, and she could play 7 instruments, and she had dancers, and I mean, it just went on and on and on. My marvelous woman, my mother was. So this marvelous moment in before my mother passed away, about 6 months before she died, my sister called me and she said, Mom is dying. She's in a hospital. She's had double pneumonia, and they've given her medication to let her go peacefully. And so what are you going to do about it, Cathy? Nothing, So I hung up the phone, and God spoke to me and said, go to Oregon, get your mother out of the hospital, and take her home. But he didn't tell me dead or alive. So that was up to me to find out. So I went to Oregon right away. I drove all the way up to Oregon, 16 hours, and went right to the hospital. And my sister says, oh no, here comes my mother. Doctors, you don't know what you're in for.
Here comes my sister.
Lady doesn't like doctors and anything like that. And she's not going to stand for this. So when I saw my mother, she was lying there, so peaceful and dying. And then they finally said, well, and during that time while this was going on, I said, what can I do with a nurse? I said, what can I do to bring her back to, her life and everything? And they said, well, I don't want you to tell anybody, but I am a nurse, and I've done this with many of the people who are in nursing homes, and after they've been medicated so they can't even hardly move anymore and they're going to die, I drive them around and I put coffee in them and I, give them caffeine and I wheel them around and I do everything I can to get them in the fresh air. So if you want to, but I didn't tell you that, do this for your mother and get her out of here. So I got my mother up in her stumbling fashion, and I said, Mom, did you know that you're going to die? I'm not going to die, she said. Who said I could die? She said, I didn't give permission to die. And I said, well, your daughter did give permission. And so I said, this can't happen, I don't think. So we did all those things for 2 hours. Drove all over the hospital and wheeled her here and fed her coffee and did all these things. Anyway, the next morning, she went to sleep and lie down. And the next morning at 8 o'clock, the doctor came in and said, I don't know what happened, but something happened. And I wouldn't call it a miracle because I don't believe in miracles. But your mother, we just had an x-ray, and there's no sign that she ever had, what did I say she had?
Pneumonia?
Double pneumonia. And so just pick her up and take her home. And Jeanette, you know, she couldn't believe it. So we took her home. But the beauty of it is that always listen to God. Because He does speak to you. You cannot breathe without God. You have a mind, and you can either go one way or another because God gives you the choice to go negative or positive. But if you listen to that and you obey it all the time, you will have miracles that you cannot believe. And they're not really miracles. They're just your thinking. It creates something in you to be willing, because of the mercy of Christ, for you to be able to do anything that you want. So 6 months later, my sister and my mother had a catharsis together about something that bothered my sister really bad when she was about 13. She did something really, really terrible. And my mother couldn't forgive her. And she never did. She sent her away to a school, and she did all these things with her to kind of get her to get straightened out. Well, anyway, they had this catharsis, and my mother said, I'm sorry. I didn't understand. I didn't know in those days years ago what to do. And so I thought that was the best thing, to send you to a wonderful school. But maybe that wasn't the best thing. And so my sister was able to unravel things that were inside of her that hurt her all her life because she didn't think she was wanted, because her mom, you know, turned her out and put her away. Anyway, time is ending.
Meaning it was healing for your sister to have that extra time that your mom was around.
For my sister to have that opportunity to be able to have that with my mother, that wouldn't have been done if we didn't listen to God.
Yes.